Okay, today we're doing Module 5, Lesson 4. This is the last lesson before your weekly check-in tomorrow. So your weekly check-in will cover 5.1 through 5.4. And your learning goal is I can use multiplication to find volume. So today we're going to take what we know about volume and figure out how we can understand how to use multiplication instead of counting cubes. Okay? Let's first talk about the problem of the day. So in this picture here, I cut it the way I said no one cuts a cake, right? Like this. 1, 2. If I do, right? Do you guys agree? Yeah. Right? Because there's a green layer, a brown layer, and a red layer at the bottom. It's kind of dark, so it's hard to see. But if I do it this way, how many layers are there? 3. Everyone, how many layers are there? 3. Go ahead and make yourself a little chart. Number of layers, 3. Okay, now if I take one of my layers, my green layer, for instance, how many cubes are there in this layer? 6, right? What about my brown layer? How many cubes are there in my brown layer? 6. What about in my red layer? How many cubes are there? 6. Now, let me take a picture of the green layer. Now, if I just look at this green layer and imagine if it was flat, what's the dimension of that, of the width? How many blocks wide is it? 2. How many blocks long is it? 3. So what's the area, or how many total blocks is that flat surface? 6 blocks. Huh. What about the brown layer? What's the area of that layer? 6. What about the red layer? So when we count the number of cubes in each layer, we're really finding the, what? Area. So on your chart, where it says number of layers, or number of cubes in each layer, I want you to write that that's the area of each layer. So this time, with this picture, I'm cutting it into layers vertically, right? And now how many layers does it have? 3. Okay, go ahead and add that to your chart. Now, if I look at one layer again, what's the area of this one layer? 6, because there's still 6 cubes in this layer. So the volume of the prism is still 18 cubic centimeters. So this time in this picture, we can see that there's a front layer and a back layer. And the area of one face, what is the dimensions now? Is it still 3 by 2? Let's take a look. Let me take a picture of just one layer. And let's imagine that it's a 2D surface. What's the dimension? 3 blocks by what? 3 blocks. So it's 3 blocks here by 3 blocks. So what's the area? 9. And we can see that there's 9 cubes there. So what's the total volume? If there's 2 layers of 9 cubes, 18 cubic centimeters. So we can see that if we take the number of layers that we have and we multiply it by the area or number of cubes in each layer, we will get the volume of the prism. And the same thing in the second example. We take the number of layers, we multiply it by the area or the number of cubes in each layer, and we get the volume. Same thing in the last example. We take the number of layers, we multiply it by the number of cubes in each layer, otherwise known as the what? The area of each layer, and we'll get the volume. This question asks us to first state the dimensions of each, the length, the width, and the height, and then find the total volume, okay? So let's first talk about the length. Now, does it really matter which one the length is, or the width, or the height? No, because right now we might think, okay, this is the length, and this is the height, and this is the width, right? But watch this. What if I take it, oops, hold on. What if I take it and I rotate it? What would happen to the length, the width, and the height? It changes, right? What if I rotate it again? Does the length, the width, and the height change again? Yeah. So when you pick which one is the length and which one's the width and which one's the height, just be consistent, okay? So I usually think up and down is the height, right? So from here to here, it shows me how tall or how high this prism is. Do you agree? Yeah. Now, if these are made out of centimeter cubes, how many centimeter cubes is the height? 4. So the height must be 4 centimeters. We use regular units to measure height because height is just a what? A line. Very good. Okay, now I usually think of the length as how long it is from right to left. How many units long is it? 5. So the length is 5 what? Centimeters. Because, again, regular units, because length is just a line. Thank you, Turjo. You totally get it. Finally, our last dimension shows you how deep or how wide it is. How many units wide is it? 2. 2. Okay. So it's 2 centimeters wide. Now we need to find the volume. Remember, we can take, if we know how many layers there are, and we know the area of one layer, we can find the volume, right? So there's 3 different ways we could split this into layers. We could cut it in half like this, right? We could cut it like this into 4 layers, or we could cut it like this into how many layers? 5. Let's do it like this, okay? So we know that there's 5 layers, okay? So let's take a look at one layer. Let's just look at this rightmost layer. What is the dimensions of this layer? Well, it has the height, which is what? 4. And it has this. It's 4 cubes by 2 cubes, right? Do you see that? 4 cubes going down and 2 cubes going deep. So how many cubes is that altogether? 8, right? So 4 times 2 is 8. That's the area of that one face. But how many of those slices do we have? 5. So we have to do 5 layers times the area, which is, of course, 8, right? So 5 times 8 is 40. So how many total cubes are there? 40 cubic centimeters. Very good. So what's a multiplication sentence that we used to find the area? We did 5. I'm going to have to rewrite it over here. 5 times 8, which is the same thing as 5 times 4 times 2. Notice these parentheses. They don't really do anything mathematically, but they do a lot to show me your thought process. It shows me that you understand that it's the area, 4 times 2 is the area of one of the faces. So if you don't put the parentheses, it shows me you do not fully understand. Remember, to find the volume, we just multiply the number of layers by the area of one layer. Do you guys agree? Okay. So let's take this front face here. That's a rectangle, isn't it? What are the dimensions of this rectangle? 7. That's one edge. What's another edge? Is this edge 3? How long is this edge right here, this top edge? 10. It's not 3 because 3 is over here. Is 3 part of this rectangle? No. So how do I find the area of this face, of this layer? I would do 10 times what? 7, which is 70. So the area of this front layer is 70. Now, a very common mistake that I hear people making already is they try to multiply it by 3. Think about it. When you build that prism, is the 3 even part of that rectangle? Is it? How many different lengths are there on this rectangle? 2, right? There's this length, which is what? 7. Those two are both 7. Do you agree? Then there's this length, which is the same as this one, right? Think about how you know a prism works. It's 10, okay? So is the 3 even part of this rectangle? No. So now that I know that the area of this rectangle right here in red is 70, I have to think about how many layers of it would there be going back. Well, that's this face, isn't it? Right? So how many layers would there be? 3. So I have to take 70, which is the area of one layer, multiply it by the number of layers. So how many layers do I have? 3 times, what's the area of one layer? 70. And how did we find the 70? We did 10 times 7. Okay. Now be careful. It says include the units in your number sentences. So we need to write that as 3 meters times 10 meters times 7 meters. Okay. So that's the same thing as we just said as 3 meters times, what's 10 times 7? 70. But what kind of units do we need? If I'm finding an area, remember 10 times 7 is the area of that front face. So what kind of meters do we, what kind of meters do we use for area? For area? Square. Remember, if I'm finding area, I'm using these square units to cover up that area, right? So it should be square meters. If you do not have the correct units for this part, you also do not show me your complete understanding. Okay, now we can multiply. What's 3 times 70? 210. And if I have meters times square meters, what kind of meters is that? So the volume of this prism is 210 cubic meters. Fill in this blank. We can say I can find the volume of a rectangular prism by multiplying what? by the number of layers. I can find the volume of a rectangular prism by multiplying the area of one layer by the number of layers. Let's go back and look at the charts we've already done. So in my prism, if I want to find the area of this front face right here, I have to multiply the length times the width. Do you agree? Okay. But then I have to multiply it by the number of layers I have, right? Which would be this last one, which in this case is the height. Okay, so it's the height times the length times the width, which will find you the area. This drawing here shows why another way we can find the volume is to take the area, which actually I highlighted in red, right? The area of one layer, which is the length, times the width, and I multiply it by the number of layers, which is the height.